Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone joining us here on the radio, video portion, podcast, whatever. Everyone, welcome into the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, hey, today we have a great show planned for you where we have none other than Mr. Marcel Gagné, our all Linux show, and of course, Cooking with Linux. That's the publication that he runs, and all around just a fun guy. And hey, I know that our Linux segment is one of our most popular, so happy that he could join us, and we have a great set of great set of topics for you. So before we do that, very important, the show notes, they'll be available at computeramerica.com after the show. It will have everything that we talk about directly from Marcel himself, and we're gonna have links to any documents, any topics, any just anything and everything will be available right there. Also, be sure to check out the video portion and be sure to check out the articles. We have a new review up of a light, and I think light is often something that is overlooked, no pun intended, and just for either video conferencing or something like what we do here at the studio, light plays a very important role. So we talked about just this little portable unit. It's a lot of fun. So everyone check that out, Computer America. Now let's go ahead before we delay any further and hey, why don't we talk to our guest? So let's bring him on. Everyone, you know him, you love him, Marcel Gagné, our resident Linux correspondent. And Marcel, how you doing? Welcome back on.
I'm doing just great. Thanks for having me back on. We missed each other last month.
We did. Unfortunate, but you're here now. We're going to make up for it. And so before we get started, everything going well? Everything good?
Yeah, everything's fine. Yesterday was like the first day of spring, as you know. And it actually felt spring-like here. Today it's kind of gloomy and gray, and it's gone back down to like 2 degrees outside. But yesterday it was up like 9-10 degrees and sunny. It was like spring. It felt really nice.
So and without giving too much location and without letting people triangulate where I am, we live right off the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is pretty famous road, parkway here along the Blue Ridge Mountains. And first day of spring, everyone decided, all right, everyone, grab your motorcycles, and if you could attach baseball cards to the exhaust and make them a little bit louder. And it was just constant the entire day. People were enjoying the sunshine in the first day of spring and taking their motorcycles out. It was, you're right, it definitely felt like it. Yep, seems like everyone agreed. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think with that being said, the weather report in, why don't we go ahead and get things started with none other than an introduction of yourself, what you do, and why Linux.
I'm just this guy, and
I'm Batman.
who's been working with computers for a long time. Back when dinosaurs still ruled the earth, I was there chipping away at my stone computers. It was it's been a while there. It's been a while, but I got excited. I got all excited about open source software. I guess in the early '90s. In fact, 1992 was the first time I ran across Linux, and I got all excited with the idea that I could run a Unix type operating system on my PC. And at the time, I was actually working for a computer company that did use Unix. So I was familiar with it and I had been working with it. And the idea that, I could have this super expensive, amazingly powerful, computer operating system on my PC was just, too good to pass up. So I loaded it up. I started playing with it. And then, years later, I'm writing columns for Linux Journal and writing books about Linux and open source software and hanging out with you on the show. So so open source has been a long journey for me. Like I said, going back to the early 90s. Actually, going back earlier than that, if you consider just plain old using open source software, like for things like email and so forth. But definitely excited about it. And, it's one of those things I like to play with. It's one of the things I like to work with. And it's one of those things I like to chat about. So
absolutely. So, and hey, we're going to do exactly that and chat about it. And as anyone out there watching the video portion can see, you have not a glass of water, but rather a glass of wine. Maybe you did something to it. But every time you come on, you have a wine that you kind of pair with it. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. Talk about today's wine.
Okay. Well, first of all, it is not just colored water. It is actually wine. In this case, it's this one here. And this is for the people who are actually looking at the video portion. You can see this is a bottle of Toro Bravo Tempranillo Merlot from Spain. And it's a 2017 wine. It's a red wine. It's like deep ruby red. And what's cool about it is it's gotten all sorts of rave reviews, which, may not be unusual for a wine, but it's unusual for a wine that runs like $7 a bottle. So this, in Canada, no less. So this was one of those things. I read the review on this thing and I immediately went out and bought a whole case of them. And as it turns out, it actually is a really nice wine. It's really quite. It's got a lot of attitude for an inexpensive wine, and it's if you can tell there, it's a deep ruby red. In terms of nose, my nose is a little bit stuffed up at the moment, so I'm not as good at it at the moment. We were talking about having colds just before then.
Yeah.
But it's got like, dark roasted coffee sort of flavors mixed in with with dark cherry sort of berry tastes. And I don't know if you've ever had Lindt chocolate. The 85% cocoa Lindt chocolate.
Really, really bitter.
Yeah, it's quite bitter. As chocolate goes, it's quite bitter. I mean, because it's not particularly sweetened a lot, and the cocoa flavors are really quite strong. So this is sort of like that. Like I said, so it's got that dark coffee, black cherry taste, but it's also got hints of that Lindt, 85% cocoa type chocolate in there. So it's a really nice wine. And again, really inexpensive. Toro Bravo 2017. There you go.
There you go. And absolutely. And by the way, just heads up. I mean, I think we talked about this on on a different show. I think we talked about it, but or we may have talked about with you. Do you use any kind of app to choose out your wine? Do you just kind of walk around, just kind of eyeball it?
Yes and no. I mean, I like going into wine. I mean, there are different places to get wine, but if you want to get wines from all over the world, you're going to go into what's called the LCBO here, which is the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. It's like the provincially mandated liquor stores. And I go in there and I wander around like a kid in a candy store, just picking things up and looking at it. And of course, I take a look at the little review cards that are on things sometimes. But I also, I'm subscribed to all sorts of news sites and websites for things having to do with Linux and open source software. And believe it or not, also 2 or 3 that have to do with wine, just because I happen to like my wine. So
I gotcha.
So I mean, I look at review sites. I look at I just wander around, as you said it. But I also have an app on my phone called Vivino, Vivino, Vivino.
That's what I was just looking at. Yes.
It's awesome. It's awesome because what you do is you take your bottle, you go into the store, you take your bottle, something you've never known before, you've never seen, and you're going, I wonder if this is any good. And what this is it's kind of a crowdsourced application for, what people think of it. So think of it like Amazon reviews, where anybody can review this thing. Well, with the Vivino app, somebody goes into the store, and what they do is they scan the label, and the engine behind Vivino can look up and find that label in a database of wines, of however many thousands and thousands and thousands of wines. And then it'll pull up all the reviews associated with that wine. Now, as with something like Amazon, if there are 2 or 3 reviews, you kind of go, I'm going to take my chances. Mm-hmm. But if you've got 250 people or 1,000 people that have given it a 3.8 out of 5. By the way, anything above 3.5 tends to be, we're verging into territory of this is really an awesome wine. So if you're looking at something like that and you've got hundreds of people that are backing it up and saying, oh yeah, definitely, really good. I'm going to look twice at a wine like that. So
I gotcha.
So definitely. So Vivino, I don't have that in the show notes, but if you're listening out there, Vivino. It right. is. Oh, there it is. There it is. You pulled it up. You are amazing.
Well, I was looking it up, and it seems like Vivino is the place to go for just kind of the general reviews. I will say though that people are very very picky. I mean, look at this guy here. He's like, 90, is it 96 points? No, but it's about 92 points, and being really particular about what he thinks of it. But hey, it seems like a good place where wine lovers go to talk about wine. So,
did they have that one on there? Did you just pull that one up?
Yeah, no, Toro Bravo. I'm not even gonna try the last one, but yeah, no, it's right there, 3.6.
There you go. Yeah, 3.6 is really, really good on Vivino. I mean, I have yet to see anything in the liquor store using Vivino that goes up above like 4.2 or something. Right. So 3.6 is actually really good. Anything below 3, you can pretty much take a pass on.
Seems like everyone agrees just with your statement there. For less than $8 plus tax, it's really, really good. Price for what you get. So there you go. Okay, wine out of the way. We all have our glass. We're good to go. We're relaxed, and now we're gonna get riled up. This first topic that you have: news, rumors, conspiracy theories, and I like this one because this is we just had this conversation with an interview that should air sometime in the next week. We had, we had an interview with NordVPN. They're a VPN provider, and we got into a conversation about how essentially how the internet was constructed 30 years ago. It has been taken advantage of, has been twisted. Something that was, kind of a feature 30 years ago has become a source of revenue, in today's day and age. And really, the way things started and the way things have been progressing, they're not sustainable in a lot of ways. You found this article, motherboardadvice.com. And the internet was built on the free labor of open source developers. You've talked about open source. It's a passion of yours. And for you to kind of highlight this, I don't know if you highlight it to disagree or agree with it, but this is kind of, again, kind of the same thing about how things have been is not how things will continue to go.
We could do like an entire show on this single topic alone. And in fact, we could probably talk for the next 2 hours on this topic alone. I'll warn you right off the bat that the article goes into this is a long article. Okay, it's not like it's
Motherboard does tend to do that. Yeah.
Sorry, my apologies. Yeah. It's not a 2-minute read. This is actually a lengthy article. But it goes into the history of it, and it talks about problems with like the Heartbleed bug that happened 2 years ago or something like that, wasn't it? Heartbleed, the OpenSSL bug. And, which basically threatened to destroy open source commerce, or not just not open source, but electronic commerce, I should say. I shouldn't just use the word open source there because, OpenSSL is the basis of encryption on the internet, which makes security and privacy possible. So it talks about that, and it goes on and talks about, the philosophy behind open source: release early, release often, the so-called Venus's law, which is, if you've got enough eyes looking at the source code, then all bugs become shallow. On and on. I mean, it's a long article. It's worthy of your time to read it. But it ties in with something. I was listening to a podcast about 2 weeks ago, which was somebody was saying that the biggest wrong that ever happened was that the internet basically started out free. Mm-hmm. and that this is like this is one of the greatest problems that we have in the world today, because it's responsible for things like the proliferation of, inescapable online advertising, for instance. The fact that everybody in the world expects to get everything for free, including content on the internet. So that means, of course, that things like newspapers and radio stations, and actually, radio stations are doing pretty well these days. Not fantastic, but better than they have in the past. Or in the recent past, I should say. They seem to be getting a bounce back. But there are all sorts of things, like the music industry, for instance, was thrown up on its end because everyone has gotten used to the idea that content on the internet is essentially free. And then, of course, you've got YouTube, right? It's like, well, I've got a 5-second ad at the beginning that I can skip it, and I can watch whatever the hell I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I can watch music videos. I can watch, sometimes I can watch entire TV shows. And if somebody's not paying attention, I can watch, movies that aren't supposed to be on YouTube, if the algorithm hasn't caught it yet, and on and on and on it goes. So this podcast that I was listening to, and I'm trying to remember who the person was at the core of it, but was basically saying, like, this was the worst thing that ever happened. The idea that the internet basically came out free. It's like, if you had a connection, a network connection, and you had, an account with an ISP, then everything else that followed was free. And of course, that genie is out of the bottle. Trying to go back and tell people, no, you should pay for these things, is damn near impossible. Like, how do you convince people who know that they can get any song and any video and any movie and anything practically that's in digital format free just by clicking a link somewhere? How do you convince those people to pay for the content? And that's a big deal to people who are creators, like musicians, artists of all kinds, writers. Hey, speaking as a writer over here, how do you convince people that they should pay for for content, or pay for your work if they know that they can get everything for free?
And I apologize for jumping in here, but I got to say that this is something I have unfortunately run into, kind of doing what I do with reviews and things like that. Obviously we have a good rapport with, companies like Razer or Logitech or, anyone who makes a mouse. And so when I have to go and, like, let's say one of my mice breaks and I have to go to the store and buy one, I look at it and go, I've gotten so many of these review units for free. I can't believe I'm paying $70 for a new mouse. It just doesn't seem worth it to me. And a lot of people out there, they go out, that looks like a $15, $20 Logitech one. But yeah, so but I mean, it's a thing where I got so many products for review for free, I found myself not valuing what they're actually worth. And trust me, a lot of these mice, I review them, I talk about them, and I talk about, $70 versus the $150 mouse or so on and so forth. They're worth $70. It's just, to me, who's gotten so many for free, it didn't seem that way. And trust me, I've changed my mind. I've gotten out of it. I buy my stuff now, but I ran into that where when you get it for free, it's not as valuable as it should be.
And even if and I speak like you said, you've got this sudden pause in your brain that says, hey, I would like to read this book, and then you go on Amazon and it's like $22, and you think to yourself, I know I can just click another link and read it free. Right. It's hard to do the right thing. Okay, even if you do the right thing, that knowledge that you can bypass the right thing is always there. Now, in the course, when it comes to things like open source software and so forth, companies are as guilty of this as anything else. And any musician or writer will have their collection of horror stories about how companies have managed to screw them out of their royalties. Am I allowed to say that on the show?
Yeah. Yes.
Cheat them out of their royalties by basically coming up with a statement that says there was a story about Bones, the TV show Bones.
Mm-hmm.
The company behind them just settled for several, like $160 million or something like that, because this show that has made them over $1 billion, and this was like 5 years ago. This is, like, all the money hasn't been counted yet. They bragged about the fact that it was $1 billion show, they somehow managed to put out a financial statement that showed that they hadn't made any money at all, and in fact, they had lost money.
That is very popular in Hollywood television movies. I think
Yes.
like the original Star Wars trilogy, on paper didn't make any royalties. It was
Yeah.
every movie's a loss. But you're right, that's an accounting thing, and yeah, you're right. Like let's say a musician, yeah, it would show that the show made no money, and hey, they would be due no royalties because they didn't make any money. So, but
And,
you're right.
and this
Yeah.
happens to musicians. This happens to actors. This happens to writers. This happens to people in all walks of lives. And when you know that a big company is basically, playing these games and cheating people out of, their share of it, it's kind of hard to be the person on the other end and go, yeah, I should actually give that big company my money to support what they're doing. So I mean, there are all sorts of arguments about this. And in the case of free software, it's like we as in the open source community, not me specifically here, but the open source community has put so much energy and time into effectively creating the internet. All right. And like creating the internet, creating an engine that generates, billions and billions and billions of dollars. And yet, and from everything, like from e-commerce to self-driving cars to online advertising to YouTube to Google to Amazon, you name it, like everything that we think of as being the basis of our online and connected world and so forth is a child of open source, of people who started out basically just hammering at it and putting out free software. And despite the fact that this is the backbone of everything on which the internet is built, it's hard to get companies to cough up any large amounts of money to support projects. Like, for instance, let's say that you've got somebody who's got a little piece of code like OpenSSL. Let's use that one as an example. You've got a little piece of code, and the person is basically barely making a living contributing to this project. And I'm not centering that particular project. I'm just using a name as an example here. And they and a couple of other people are sort of putting in their time and energy and so forth. But the big companies, the like all the beneficiaries of this work that has effectively gotten no money, aren't willing to throw anything in because they think, well, it's just free, so we're just going to continue to use it, despite the fact that it's a massive portion of how we make money.
Right. It's so this is something that's maybe a little bit different, but I really think this is an education problem. Just bringing attention to the issue is going to help immensely. I will say that, let's see. So there's a game, World of Warcraft. I'm sure a lot of people have played it. There's an add-on for World of Warcraft, Deadly Boss mods. Essentially, it's been a fixture of WoW. Many people have downloaded it and used it in this thing called raiding, and essentially every patch, every iteration, every raid, this one person, like I didn't know this until about a year ago, one person updates the whole thing, makes sure all the timers are right, puts in immeasurable work, and he does it alone. No one really knew. No one really thought about it. When he made a post on a social media site and saying that, he was having problems, with his mother, he had problems that he was neglecting himself with his house, people came together and donated thousands of dollars, contributed so much money, but they didn't know. This guy was doing it for free in his spare time and really dedicated himself to a project that he was passionate about, but he didn't do it for the money. But once people found that out, they supported him. It's just the people who were giving him money, though, they didn't have a bottom line. They're everyday, average, ordinary people. I can see where companies who have a bottom line, who have to answer to, why is our profits not X, Y, Z? I can see why a company, rather than people, wouldn't be as eager to throw money when they don't have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I understand all that, and I'm just gonna throw in one of my favorite throwaway lines here, which is that the stock market is evil. It is one of the greatest evils in the history of society.
But boy, is it good at what it does. Right.
The stock market does not put value on a company in a way that makes any kind of sense whatsoever. But of course, it also does things like, well, you're spending money here, and we're looking for more return on our investment from you. And it's like, well, yeah, but I need to pay these people. We'll find a way to pay them less, or find a way to get stuff for free or whatever. And I mean, like in the publishing world, there are tons of places which basically say, would you like to write for us? I mean, I've been approached like this, I don't know how many times. And it's like, well, what do you pay? Well, we pay in exposure. It's like, well, I don't need exposure. I mean, I need money. But in the open source world, there are people who, like I said, have been contributing and do contribute, but the value of their work is not understood. Now, this brings us back to this whole notion of, if companies are going to make, mega billions of dollars on the backs of people that are poorly represented or poorly paid or whatever, then perhaps we do need to redesign, what we think of as capitalism. You guys have got a guy named Andrew Yang who's running for president of the United States. Mm-hmm. By the way, if you can get Andrew on the show, the man is a fascinating dude, because he's a tech guy, like he's a tech guru. He is a venture capitalist who has funded all sorts of different organizations to incubate and start companies, small companies and so forth, and grow them. So he's a fascinating guy. He understands the business side of all this stuff. But he's also pushing for universal basic income, which is the idea that everyone gets some fixed amount of money, regardless of whether they work or don't work or whatever. Mm-hmm. And of course, because he's in the States, he has to use the word freedom in the description of it. You guys are weird that way.
Hey, it's the using the right words is just as important when talking about Linux as it is talking about American politics. But you're right, and actually funny, we don't often get into politics, but I will say the last time we had a politician on the show, it was a gentleman running for the governorship of Florida, and he didn't win, but that's not our fault. But it was very interesting to actually talk with politicians, not about the hot button topics, but about their views on tech. And you're right, very often, elected officials are completely in the dark about technology. So we'll reach out to Yang and see if he wants to come on the show.
Yeah, no, I said, this is a guy who knows tech, and I'm a Canadian, as you know, so it's not like I'm going to vote in your elections. But he's a fascinating dude, and he's fascinating not just because he's running for president, but because he does understand what it takes to build a business and to fund a business and to and to get money in the hands of people who maybe don't have it, so that they can grow business. Right. It's a fascinating take. Anyway, I mean, like I said, we could spend like the entire show doing nothing but talking about this topic. And I feel like we're heading in that direction.
We're about 3 minutes from the break. Let's try to wrap this up in 3 minutes, and then the second half of the show, we'll do the rest of the show notes.
You know what? Let's just jump. We'll skip the Spider-Verse. Just to say that Sony has opened up the software, the software that they use to animate, to do the animation stuff for Into the Spider-Verse. They've just released it as open source. I'm just going to toss it out there for somebody who wants, here we go with, free tools that can do amazing things. Thank you, Sony. Very nice of you to have done that, and it's good. It's good that you've done that. So let me just jump to the third thing there.
Sure.
Okay. The third thing in my news things, and oddly enough, it's a column by me.
How'd you do that? You got a topic with the author. That's amazing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I don't usually do this, but I did it because I got that story on the internet built on the back of open source programmers, and it got me to thinking about the idea of people who are who are getting certified to work in Linux and open source, who are getting their paperwork so they can be DevOps engineers and stuff like this. And it got me to thinking about that. And you remember we had a discussion back in January about, millennials don't give a crap about open source.
I recall. Yeah.
Yeah. And this got me writing. So I sat down and started writing about the whole idea that if you are going into a business where you're basically making your employer rich on the backs of the knowledge that you are bringing to the table, and that knowledge is to support an open source infrastructure, it behooves you to know where that stuff came from. And and I've got some references in there too. We built this city by Starship, and so it's like an article for a Rolling Stone magazine as well, if you want to read it. But the short version of all this is that if you are going to go to work at open source, it is important to understand that open source built the internet, built the world in which we live today, built Amazon, built Google, you name it, built YouTube, built all of these things that we take for granted and that we use every day. Open source built all that stuff. And if you're going into the business of Linux and open source, if you're going to go out there and study in university or college, if you're going to get certified, if you're going to get a degree, if you're going to get a diploma, whatever, okay, remember that that open source people built all this stuff and that we still have the power to do something with it. Because when it's all said and done, it comes back to the people who created this stuff in the first place, even if it is wrapped up in multi-billion-dollar companies. That code, the code at the heart of all their success, is code that was built by
and Marcel,
people.
we're going to pause right here for break. Everyone, we'll be right back. More Computer America after this.
Costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare.
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. Sorry for the abrupt, kind of pause of the conversation. We are joined by none other Marcel Garnier, and it's our all Linux show, Cooking with Linux. And everyone, we continue on. So Marcel, right before the break, let's go ahead and wrap up that thought you were having about this article that you wrote.
Hey, no worries. I do tend to go on. Anyway, I guess what it all comes down to is, if people are getting into the business, and this is one of the reasons I think it's important to, one of the reasons, not just to pat people on the back and say, hey, you did great stuff for the world, blah, blah, blah. No, not just that, but for people to understand that it is people like them who built all of this, and that companies who use all this stuff, although some do contribute, I will not deny that, some do contribute. There's an awful lot of stuff out there that is nonetheless either underrepresented financially or not represented at all. In other words, people just do use this stuff. Heck, I've written software which is being used out there, which nobody else is, which I've never collected any money for. And that's all fine, but there probably should be a system in the world, and maybe UBI is one of those things, but there should be a system in the world for for rewarding people who are doing things for the right reasons, not necessarily with financial reward as their first incentive, but because they want to do good things for the world. They want to make life better for their fellow human beings. And unfortunately, we as a society, particularly as a capitalist society, have this bad idea or this bad habit of devaluing work that isn't, adding to the bottom line of a company somewhere. So if somebody is, volunteering their time to work at homeless shelters or something like that, well, that's not really valuable work. Yeah, it is valuable work. I mean, you're making the world a better place. And that should be recognized, and perhaps it should be recognized financially in an across the board sort of way. So the idea that, there are people out there who are doing nothing and aren't contributing, well, you don't actually know that. They may be contributing to the backbone of everything that makes the world today work. And so people that are going into this business understand this, recognize this, know that you have power, and start to build a better world with the knowledge that, you have those tools at your disposal.
It seemed like that's the time that the companies decide that this is valuable work, that they really want to do something. I mean, you could look at the Red Hat acquisition by IBM that we talked about. You could look at Microsoft buying GitHub. You could look at any number of these large entities overtaking open source, parts of the open source community, and they pay billions of dollars for the privilege. They certainly spend the money, and that money goes to who knows where it goes to, but it's not. You're right. It's not in a very distributed way. It's these large, moves by these large companies, and then they get all of the talent that is associated with them in one fell swoop. There's no process in place. Like there's really not a lot of middle ground. You're right. So.
All right, so let's move on then. Just so we'll leave. So for the people out there who are listening, we'll call the first half the political segment or the socio-political segment of our show.
I will say that today's featured topic, and just looking at the image on today's featured topic, this looks more my speed. So let's go for it.
There you go. Okay, well, listen. I wanted to talk about kids and Linux. I thought about this partly because one of the things, believe it or not, this all ties in a strange, magical way. You remember the last column there? I had a picture of a green and white PC up at the top.
Right, yeah.
We'll get to that thing in just a minute. Okay.
Sure.
This is a game that I actually had for I use this with my kids 10 years ago. So this software has been around for a long time, and it continues to be updated. This is actually called J'ai compris. Or G compris, as if you want to say it with an English accent. And it literally translates from the French, like the sound of it, J'ai compris, I have understood. Okay. And it's a collection of open source applications or educational applications and games, bright, colorful games that kids can play on a computer. And J'ai compris is, I think it's actually even available. I've got a link down there. I think it's even available for people who are running Windows. So I think this is one of those things that you can probably download for Windows as well. Don't I won't swear to that right now, but we can take a look at that a little bit later. But anyway,
and by the way, just real quick, the first kind of button on the website, download J'ai compris for Windows. So yep, you're right. You're good.
There you go.
You're good.
There you go. Anyway, so this has got things like in topics like reading and math and puzzles, computer skills, how to use your mouse and stuff like that. So this starts very, very young, and then moves up in complexity to different ages and so forth. And again, it's bright, it's colorful, it's friendly, it's got a lot of, hey, you did wonderful, that was really good. It's a great app for your kids, and it's available. It's in every Linux repository. So if you've got a Linux desktop, it's as simple as using your software center and installing it. And obviously, if you are running Windows, you can go to the website and download a copy of it. So all free and open source. It's been around for years, and it continues to be updated. At the time that I took this screenshot, there had been a release in the last month. So, so it is completely perpetually up to date. The next thing I wanted to, so as the kids get a little bit more into things, there's a program called KTurtle. KTurtle is a beginner's programming environment. And this is actually a programming environment. There's actually a coding language. And the idea is that you've got a pen, which happens to be this little turtle icon, okay? And you drop the pen or you pick it up. And depending on what you do with it when you drop it or pick it up, it draws lines or it just skips and doesn't draw something. So for instance, just to give you an idea of a really simple little program on here, which if people are looking at a screenshot, they would know it. Reset. Reset would clear what's called the canvas, the white area in the center, okay? Repeat 3. Okay, so in other words, do what I'm going to tell you to do next 3 times. And then you do an open bracket, which is what are those 3 things that we're going to do? Mm-hmm. And forward 100 pixels. And then you say turn left 120. That's 120 degrees. And then you just close the bracket. So you did that once, you do that twice, you do that 3 times, you've drawn a triangle on the screen. And that's really, really simple, but it can get extremely complex as well. Like you can do some amazing things like, high level fractals and stuff like that. And in fact, KTurtle has a way to download a whole bunch of programs, in terms of being able to learn from it. You click on it and you say, hey, go out there and find me some programs, and it will download them. And then including things like one of my favorites is the Sierpinski triangle, which is like this triangles upon triangles upon triangles to create this, like massively complex graphic. It's really beautiful. But again, you can download that, and then kids can take a look at the code and learn how it works, modify it, play with it, find out what happens, and yeah, there you go. It's just fantastic. Anyway, yeah. So next thing on my list is a program called Scratch, or a programming environment called Scratch. And Scratch is kind of like the Lego of programming environments. And the screenshot I included is actually something my kid made. And he was, this is at least 2 years ago, might be longer ago than that, but he was maybe 9 years old at the time. And he wrote this thing called a cat simulator, which uses these Lego blocks, sort of, they're not Lego blocks. They don't look like Lego blocks, but they're colorful icon type things that you drag into the programming environment to create loops, to display text, to do all sorts of things like that. You can do Scratch online, but you can't save your work locally. So you don't have stuff, that you can save for posterity or anything like that. But you can download Scratch as a program on Linux. And you've got the environment on your desktop, and you can, it uses sprites, and you can draw backgrounds and stuff like that. And again, you saw the picture that, or you can see the picture there of what my son put together on the system. So that is Scratch. And again, it's open source, and it's developed by MIT, as in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And again, free and open source, and it's a great thing for kids to learn how to program. And like there are all sorts of colorful little sprites and icons that are pre-created, like the cat in the picture, for instance. You don't have to draw the cat. It comes with things like bugs and animals and people and stuff like that you can insert into your program and have move around the screen and do things, depending on where you click and what you do and so on.
Looks like Scratch, and just from a quick Google search, looks like Scratch is something that they are using in kindergarten, in grade school, and in classrooms already. And so, hey, you have the same software available at home. So cool.
And it is a legitimate programming environment. I mean, you are learning to code. But you're learning to code in a way that's friendly and non-threatening.
I did not take my first coding class until I took like C and C# whatever in college, and holy crap, that is the driest, most boring thing to learn the basics of the C programming language. I'm glad someone threw a cat in there because it needed it. It needed it.
If you don't get captured by the idea of, oh, look, I told the computer to do this and it did it. If that doesn't catch your attention, most computer programming courses are going to bore you to tears, because it's like, okay, so today we're going to learn about logic, logic and how you draw out, a flow chart to create a program, and pseudocode. And it's like, oh, please kill me now.
Yeah. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Anyway, so go back to, I know you're showing the sugar interface on the screen there. Go back and show that little green PC off my article there.
Sure.
That little green PC, okay, is part of what was a rather bold project called the one laptop per child project, and
Bill
the
Gates,
idea
right?
was put forth by a guy named Nicholas Negroponte
Oh.
to the Davos Forum several years ago. And the idea was we would like to build a sub $100 laptop so that every kid in developing countries can have a computer to learn, to be educated and to become part of the modern digital economy. And it was an amazingly bold project. There were some prototypes and a few of these laptops made that floated around. In fact, I think there were like 3 different versions made, if I remember correctly. But despite all that, the project really never did go anywhere. But as I put it, it left some interesting open source DNA behind. And by the way, OLPC, I think in the show notes I've got the link to the OLPC Wikipedia article. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I really should put it in there. But I do have the Sugar Labs article, which I'll get you back there anyway. Anyway, so Sugar was an interface that was designed with the idea that it would work on a very simple screen, not necessarily using a lot of fancy high-resolution graphics, and that would tie in kids in terms of their friends, their classroom, their community, and people around the world, so they could share projects, work on things together. There was like you see the circle there and so forth. This is you in the center, and these are the applications that you've got open, the ones that are green, and then a whole bunch of other applications that were included as part of this educational platform called Sugar. And oh, by the way, you can actually download Sugar for Android if you actually want to check it out. And you don't have a PC at home. I realize there are actually people who don't have PCs; they've just got their tablets.
Right.
But you can download Sugar for both iOS and Android. So just search for Sugar. Anyway, it's a really neat idea, which is just like outside of what you'd call the classic desktop. It's not the start button in the corner with the applications online along the bottom or something like that. This is a very different way, and it's designed to make you think in terms of the community that you're connected with. And and typically, obviously, we're talking about a community of kids here who can all work together on different projects. And there are lots of neat things. There are things like mazes and, like I said, an ebook reader. And by the way, the ebook reader lets you download ebooks from free text libraries like Project Gutenberg and stuff like this. So this is actually a fully functional, easy to use interface designed for education that kids can use. And despite the fact that the OLPC laptop might not be available, you can actually download and install Sugar on any Linux system and run it, or like I said, run it on Android for that matter, and get a feel for that same sort of idea. And it is kind of neat to be able to use it with like other people in the room or nearby or something like that who are sharing in your little learning community. So Sugar, it's part of the OLPC stuff, and it was designed with kids in mind. Yeah, and particularly for that matter, in kids who may not have come from a technological background to begin with.
Yeah, and I definitely remember the one laptop per child. I think the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation picked it up for a little bit, or contributed to it. I believe, because it's one of those things that maybe kids who grew up in the 90s, when computers were first becoming a thing, and they were learning on these things. I remember that I had some of the worst computer games you could ever think of, but at the same time, they were fun just because they were on a computer. They were interesting. So I think you're right, in a place where maybe you don't have access to computers, or maybe people just have smartphones, something like this laptop, or something like the Sugar operating system, even though it looks kind of rudimentary, it would still capture people's imagination, or kids' imagination. So
well, and believe it or not, it even has things like the logo programming environment, like Scratch, so that you can actually design and learn to design and write code at a simple level. A simple and increasingly complex level. Because, like I said, let's face it, even with Logo and KTurtle, which we talked about a little bit earlier, you can write some pretty complex things with just the building blocks that are there.
Right. Absolutely. So there you go. Links to everything right there. And I think you're going to add the Wikipedia link to the.
Yeah, I'll do that. In fact, let me just open Wikipedia here. Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah. And you can see the whole thing there. Very, very cool. And there was a joke on Archer that kind of ripped on this a little bit.
Archer.
and they had like a philanthropist, and he was like, yeah, so we tried to do 1 laptop per child soldier, which quickly became 1,000 laptops for every child warlord. And but hey, they tried their best, and there you go. So even though I don't think the project is going on anymore, Sugar continues on.
Well, it's not completely dead,
right?
But it's practically completely dead. And you remember when I talked about the idea that the interface was available for tablets?
Yeah.
I mean, you can get. I realize they're virtually useless, but you can get an 8 gig tablet nowadays for $50, or less. So the sub $100 laptop is not really as necessary when you can get such cheap mobile hardware anyway. So
it says right here on their website that it runs on Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi, $35 new, or you can get it for cheaper elsewhere. Very affordable.
Yeah,
there you go.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, 10 minutes left, and looks like, hey, we may actually finish kind of on time. But
whoa, that's amazing, because we never do that.
I know.
All right.
Distribution focus.
So this is my distribution focus, and it's kind of like it's a quasi Linux distribution. I'm bending the rules maybe a little tiny bit here. And in fact, it's kind of a Linux/Android distribution. In the sense that it is Linux, but it has like the full Android environment built on top of it as well. And in fact, this thing is called Prime OS, and I ran into this a couple weeks ago or something like that, and I'm sort of captivated by it. And the reason for it is that I've tried a lot of Android type emulators on the desktops. I've tried some things which were like, projects that were, that you paid for. It was like, $30-$40 to get it. And none of them were as good as this thing is. And this is free software that you can download. Anyway, Prime OS. And what I like about it is it's relatively modern. I mean, it uses I realize that the 5.0 Linux kernel just came out. And that's a joke. The joke is that Linus didn't have any more fingers to count on, so they went to 5 instead. But they went to 5.0 for no good reason other than it was starting to get messy. But 4.19.27 is the current Linux kernel that's under this thing. So it's fairly recent. I mean, it's modern code. I think it's based on Nougat, if I remember correctly, the Android Nougat version in terms of how it handles things. But as you can tell, it's a desktop environment. So you've got windows that you can drag and drop with a mouse. You click with a mouse, you can use a keyboard, unlike just a tablet interface. And of course, if you've got a big screen, like if you've got, a 24-inch screen or something like that in front of a PC, and it's an older PC, this thing supports both 64-bit and 32-bit architecture, so you can download it for both of them. You can download an ISO, burn the ISO, and just boot from it. It'll run from a USB stick if you want to do that instead. But the cool thing about this is just that you've got all this screen real estate that you can use. Now, the screenshot that I use is a virtualized environment, so I don't have the I don't have the biggest screen imaginable on there at the moment. But like I said, you can run it on whatever monitor you've got available, and then that way you can play your games like literally on full screen, like on a big, giant, massive screen. And this is really neat on a number of levels. One of them is obviously, if you've ever played some of these MMO games, on your phone, it can be kind of wicked. I mean, I've tried playing PUBG on my on my Pixel 2, and it's fun, but it's hard, man. It's not easy playing. It's not easy having a screen that's that complex with that much information going on. on just a notebook. So this gives you like the full desktop experience, and it's got Google Play integrated on it.
We won't report you, Marcel, but just let you know, gaming companies tend to frown on this kind of thing. It's kind of like when you use a mouse and keyboard attachment for, let's say, Xbox. You give yourself kind of an unfair advantage because you're grouped with other people who play on phones. But if you're but really, at the end of the day, it's not illegal. It's not, I know nothing. They frown upon it, but you're right. It's improving your quality of game. So I really don't see a problem.
A lot of games, it isn't just a question of being able to respond quickly. Yeah. It's just the fact that it'd be nice to have a bigger screen. So I'll just throw that in there as defense.
Right.
But this is neat, and it does have, like I said, it does have Google Play and the Google Play environment fully integrated into it, which means that you can just log into your Gmail account or whatever, and you have access to anything that you might, that you've got available, including games that you've purchased. So if you've got games that you've purchased and you want to play them on a bigger screen, this is your way to do it. Now, the other thing that's neat about this that I should mention, I know I keep talking games here, but the other thing that's neat about this is that there's actually an app that comes pre-installed on it called Game Center. And I'm looking at the icon. There it is. There we go. Game Center. And Game Center keeps track of all the games in one place and has ways where you can tweak the hardware and so forth. And there's something called Deca Pro, which lets basically you use your computer keyboard to play some of these games in ways that you wouldn't be able to do it. Like PUBG, for instance, has got, you have to have your thumbs, and using the touch pads on both sides, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're touching the screen on both sides. Whereas this, now you're allowed to use the keyboard and mouse. You're allowed to map the keyboard and mouse using Deca Pro. So it's a neat gaming environment. And of course, here's the other thing that I love about this. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know about you, but if I play a game that's graphic intensive for even any length of time whatsoever, my battery just dies.
Of course.
And I'm sorry, but that's a real pain in the butt. Well, if you're running it on your desktop and it's plugged into the wall, the battery won't die.
Very, very true.
It's awesome.
Unfortunately, not everyone has the Energizer phone, so unfortunately, but I will say that that's certainly the case. And I gotta say, you have just highlighted one of the issues in mobile gaming, and that's that people play it on desktop, play with a keyboard and mouse, and they give themselves an unfair advantage. Again, I'm not against it. I think that everyone should have access to these tools. I think that people should have the option to play with a keyboard and mouse if they so choose.
You say frown upon it. I actually don't really have a lot of problems with this because, some people have got I've got a Samsung Tab S2 mm-hmm. here, which is a reasonably, good sized tablet. And frankly, even this is an advantage if I'm playing a game over playing the same game on my Pixel. Okay, because I've got more room to move around and do things, and I'm still just playing on a. I say
frowned upon. I say that because I think everyone should have the advantage to play on a keyboard and mouse. I think that when they purposely say no one should play on a keyboard and mouse, they're saying everyone should be handicapped. Everyone should play at a disadvantage rather than everyone coming up to the same level. That's how I feel. But yeah, no, you're right. This is definitely good. And Prime OS, this is so you can install this on just about anything, right?
Yeah, you can. And like I said, there's a 32-bit version. So if you've got like an older piece of hardware out there, I mean, not everything that you're going to run requires a GPU, right?
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of games that work just, that are just fine, without having a GPU. So if you have an older PC and you don't mind, you're more interested in playing some of the calmer games, let's call them. You can just, you can use that old PC with the 32-bit version and do that. So I'm excited about this. I actually think this is kind of cool. And although I've been running it virtually on my desktop here, I've got a fairly punchy notebook, as you know. Mm-hmm. So it runs quite well here, but I'm in the process of setting up a PC that I'm going to dedicate to this so that I actually have basically a big Android PC.
There you go. And there was an article that we did, and by the way, folks, we're about to wrap it up, but there was an article that I did, and I was hoping it was going to do something for me that it just didn't, and that's connecting my phone to my computer in a much more simple way. And it had like screen mirroring and that kind of thing and file sharing, but it didn't do exactly what I wanted. So everyone, hey, we're going to have to kind of pause it there. So Marcel, I'll let you have the last word. If people want to find out more, obviously the show notes have linked to all your social media, but where can they go to find more of you?
You can go to marcelgagne.com or cookingwithlinux.com, or for that matter, if you just want to see videos that I do that show you how to use this stuff, you go to youtube.com/freethinkeratlarge. And on Twitter, I am WFTL. That's it, twitter.com/WFTL.
All right, everyone, go check it out. And in the meantime, until next time, Marcel, which hopefully will be next month. Hey, everyone, we'll definitely catch you then. And everyone, just to give you a heads up, tomorrow on the show, we should have none other than Nominate. We tried to have them on, I believe last week, but we had issues with with our technical difficulties. But Nominate, they are the premier domain registrar in Europe, and they're coming to North America. So we're going to talk about why they're doing that. So everyone, catch you next time. Marcel, again, thank you so much. Everyone, have a great day. Bye-bye.